If you could wake up every single day and go, this is exactly what I want to be doing, then you have an idea of the path that you need to go down. You know, if somebody wrote you a $100 million check, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do?
Right.
Think about all the thoughts and the feelings and the ideas and the things that you would do. And maybe initially you'd want to go on a spending splurge.
Sure.
And buy a bunch of dumb crap, but I mean, hopefully you would have the discipline to go, you know what? I want to do something more. I want to do something to give back to people.
Absolutely.
My community or my family.
Yep.
And stay disciplined in what it is you will be wanting to achieve. But I think, you know, figuring out if I was given an excessive amount of money and I didn't have to go to my job, my 9 to 5,
Yeah.
what would you, if you had to pick a career at that moment,
Yeah.
with having that amount, what would you decide to do, regardless of, now you've got $100 million in the bank, what are you going to do every morning?
Yeah.
Make a decision. And if you go, oh, this is what I will do, well, then start working towards doing that now. And then maybe someday you can have that $100 million check in the bank.
And it, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with getting out of your comfort zone. You know, that's how you progress in a lot of things. Because I mean, one thing for me, like during my, let's just say my bodybuilding career, man, I didn't have any problem getting on stage when it was with other competitors. But when I would get hired for a guest posing, I would be terrified.
Really?
I was terrified
That was my favorite.
Really, I mean, it became a favorite part of mine. But I remember initially going, I'm the entertainment, like I can't do this. But no matter what, any opportunity like that ever presented itself, I would immediately just say yes to it and then just deal with it.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I was going to grow from this and I knew that it was going to produce something good. So no matter how scared I was, I would just always say yes right away. I wouldn't even hesitate.
Yeah.
So just say yes and just deal with it. And it would end up being so rewarding.
Totally.
You know, if an uncomfortable opportunity arises and you know in the back of your mind that it will produce good, say yes to it right away. Don't even hesitate, just be, yep.
Yeah, I think the discipline too, there's the grit and the discipline, there's also a level of parenting involved, our upbringing, I think that infused that into us and kind of made us into who we are today. So I think parenting is big. Also whatever genetic contributing factors in terms of your thought processes and who and how you are and how you function. Having kids, as you guys know, you see, regardless of their environmental exposures and some of the things that have taken place to influence their lives, their mentality or their beliefs, you know that this person was encrypted and coded in such a way that they are kind of who they are, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are genetic components
Absolutely.
to whether or not you're maybe more disciplined or have more grit than others or more determined.
Absolutely.
You know, and then from there you can assess your child and kind of reposition them into a way that you bring out the best in them and get them to flourish for who they are. So I think a lot of it has to do with obviously genetic components, but also parenting. And I think a lot of the issues that we face in today's world are due to parenting.
Say it.
A lot of parenting issues, you know. Structure, discipline.
Yeah.
Even
grit.
if it's like a little bit of structure, like, so for me, I've just always been this way. So if I have like this huge goal or something that I want to do, like I can't look at the big goal. I have to think like, hey, what little things am I going to do today? Because if I look at the big thing and it's overwhelming,
Right. Yeah.
And for me, it makes me not want to do any of it. Totally. So I'm like, you know what? Like, which little parts can I knock off?
Yeah.
And those things, like to me, especially for like bodybuilding type stuff or whatever it is, if I'll just make like little habits and as I build off of these little habits, then like the rest of my day kind of takes care of itself. You get everything done that you need to get done.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, man, they have that problem.
Yeah.
It's a
They get
real
overwhelmed.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And anything that's overwhelming, man, it can kind of freeze you.
Yeah.
Like it's like, man, I have this, like, or even if it's something that they want to do, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, like if you'll just make habits,
Totally.
and that's like what turns into, you can end up calling that discipline.
Yeah.
But man, once something's just kind of part of your routine, you don't have to think about it. It's not hard anymore. It's just, hey, this is the chunk of my day where I do this.
Exactly.
So that's something that helped me.
Totally. And to add on to that, I'm sure in bodybuilding, let's say you had a goal and a physique that you wanted to achieve, and you went through those magazines and you looked at those visuals,
Yeah.
and you were repetitively looking at images and of bodybuilders of what you wanted to aspire to, right?
Yeah.
So regardless if you're a bodybuilder, you're a businessman, I think it's very important to set up visual cues within your office space or your home or your gym to be constantly looking and reminding yourself, what you said here, it makes, some people can get overwhelmed, but it's sometimes you just got to take a step back, print out a picture of it, put it on the wall, and just be confident enough to say,
Do you want to put my picture on your fridge?
one day,
Yeah.
one day, I remember when I got into bodybuilding as a teenager, I know you guys already touched on yours, but one of the things that my father was a pro bodybuilder, and 12, 13, 14, I had no desire whatsoever. My dad
Interesting.
wanted me to get into the gym and start doing this and that. I was a guitarist and first chair violinist, so a musician. And then I got into high school and quickly realized that I wanted to get laid, and the violin wasn't paying. So, I think every high school boy is like reassessing, what the fuck am I doing and why am I doing this? And so I started lifting. And at that point, a couple months in, I remember being in the grocery store with my dad, and Ronnie Coleman was on the cover of Flex, and I'd never seen anything like it. Picked up the cover, and looked at my dad, like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
And he looked at me with his man of no words. He's like, lots of work. Lot of work. And that was it, in his broken, lot of work. I'm like, okay. And I asked him, I never asked him for much. I was like, can I have it? He said, and he bought it for me. And I remember taking it home, and it just so happened that in this magazine, there was a calendar that displayed all the Mr. Olympias that I've ever won up until Ronnie. And I remember putting it on my wall and looking at Dorian in particular, and he was in one of his shots where he's down, he's showing the calf, the arm, the lat, the whole thing, and I was just so moved by this one picture that I knew in my head, all right, I want to start lifting, I want to get into this, and I want to be a bodybuilder. Not sure how, but I would love to be able to achieve that. And I started lifting and going through the motions and doing my thing and being exploratory, still defiant, didn't want to hear it from my dad, so I was kind of doing it on my own, if you will. And enough time went by, and I met a guy named Jeff, who was a mentor, ultimately a mentor up until this day. I look at him as a mentor, and he, I remember him lending me the Unbelievable
DVD.
tape.
VHS.
Remember I went home, and I was probably 6 months into lifting. I popped in the Unbelievable. You've seen it, right? Yeah, I don't know if a bodybuilder hasn't.
Yeah.
Popped it in, and I'm in the living room. My mom, my mom walks by. What are you doing? I was like, I just got this DVD or this tape from Jeff, and said to check it out. Said it'd be pretty cool to watch. And as soon as I hit play, and Ronnie popped up on the screen,
Yeah.
I was like overwhelmed.
Totally. I remember.
With butterflies.
Yeah.
And a sense of, at that very moment in my life, it was literally like when I talk about switches. A switch went off, and I knew exactly within a fraction of a second what I was going to do.
That's awesome.
And that I was going to turn pro.
Yeah.
It was like there was no turning back. It was like that. This is it.
Yeah.
And it didn't even start training. It was just the opening scenes with the music in the background. Mitz had shot this tape, and and he's just going through there's the intro and the credits, and I'm like, I know what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I know.
That's crazy.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
This is what I'm gonna be.
Yeah.
That's so funny, man. That's like so exactly what I was talking about before. Like looking at something that it's too big for me.
Right.
Right. So I would see magazines like that. Rob saw that video, and I'm like, that's ridiculous.
It's impossible, right?
So I'm like, instead, I'm like, you know what? Like, let me go to this show, and I picked a show that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I looked at the NPC online stuff, and I'm like, I looked at who was in my weight class, who was winning like the bigger Florida shows. I'm like, oh, and it was like Jamie Ibone or something.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so that like, this guy's a middleweight, And I'm like on the small side of middleweight. Like that's what I need to look like.
Yeah.
So then I'm just like every show I'm like, okay, now I need to be this guy.
Level.
So yeah. So then I would just like take a year at a time. Let me get better for a year.
Yeah.
You do I didn't even think about going to turning pro. Nobody said talked about turning pro in bodybuilding anymore, especially like where I'm from. It's a small town.
Right.
Like nobody's turned pro there. So it was like I went to nationals and I was top 5 in heavyweights my first trip to nationals, and I was like, oh. And then somebody's like, hey, dude, you know that's this many spots away from turning pro. I'm like, oh, this is like a real. So then I'm like, okay. So that's when I was like, all right, now I want to do it. So, well, yeah, but everybody's just got their different ways to go about it. Because I mean, like, absolutely, I looked at that video and I was like, oh, dude, that would be cool.
Yeah.
But from what I look like
Yeah.
to that, I'm like,
It's too unrealistic, right?
Yeah,
Right.
It's
No,
crazy.
it's
Crazy to
interesting.
me.
So you have a different approach where you wanted to see it in stages. Where me, I put those posters on the wall and I kept watching that DVD, and I actually never looked at anybody except for Ronnie, Dorian, Paul Dillette, like the biggest of freaks.
Yeah.
And so that poster, and there was times where I would walk by the poster on my way out of my room, and I'd look at Dorian and I'd look at myself at 190 pounds. And like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
How am I going to get there? And, a year would go by, and little by little, you'd get bigger, and your arms would go from 15 to 16, 16, 16.5, and I would constantly walk by this poster, and I would just be like, how? I don't know how.
Yeah.
But I know it will happen.
Yeah.
I have no fucking idea how this is going to happen.